All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Traffic Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, June 30th. So month end, quarter end goes out with a really strong rally there at the end of the day. Indices closed pretty close to high of the day. S&P finished up. Well, futures finished up 1.2%, but SPY finished up 1.5%. The Qs strong finished up close to 2% on the day. IWM small caps also participated quite well, finished up 1.5% for the day. And a couple things to kind of point out in the chart. I'm going to talk quickly here because we do have a member webinar coming up at 5 o'clock. So this will be a very short video, but just a couple things that we noticed for the day and for the week was that we basically have gone through the value area already for the week. So that's a pretty strong move that we had, and that's what's known as the 80% rule. When you start the period below value, enter value. There's an 80% chance that you go all the way through it. We did that, so we've got some resistance ahead. So, I always go back to risk reward in these situations, right? When in terms of trading, now that we've basically moved all the way through the value area, that's a pretty decent move. And who knows? Maybe the move is done for the week. In terms of but we don't know. But basically, it's a good place, in my opinion, always to take some more profits once we have this type of move. Rather than look to start new positions up here. We're going to have to break basically 3,100. Can it be done? Sure, of course. But if you're working in terms of that risk reward type framework, this is a great place to take some profits on some trades that you may have added into the weakness the last couple days. So it is what it is. That's just how it works. And then we'll see if we can get above 3,100. Again, I'm talking about the short term in terms of risk reward. That gave you a good sense. Just as last week when we approached the top of value, right, and we could not get through it, that kind of told you something too. Also on, I believe this was on Friday or Thursday at the close, when we ramped into the close, and then we could not get into we could not reclaim the value area too. That gave you a little bit of a hint as well. So I think it's doing the same thing here. We tagged this with a crazy bar at the last 5 minutes of the day. A couple other observations that I noticed too, just like when the market is under pressure, around 12 o'clock, we're getting basically, and we saw the same thing yesterday too. There's very low volume around 12 to 1 o'clock because that's when there's not a lot of trading. Right, one of the most widely used algorithms that institutional traders use, is a VWAP algorithm. The VWAP algorithm, volume weighted average price, tries to mimic the volume profile of a security, and that's known as when traders say, "Oh, I put this order in the machines." Right, I put it in the algos to execute, and what it will do is parcel an order over the day. Again, traders will use this type of order if they just want to execute something over the day, or if they're buying and selling something and don't want a lot of slippage to it. But basically, once they put that in the machines in a VWAP algorithm, it's going to trade a lot more during the beginning of the day, and then it doesn't trade a lot between the hours of, let's say, 12:45 to about 1:30. And then the algorithms basically come back on. That's how a lot of VWAP is one of the most widely used algorithms out there. But a lot of algorithms know not to trade a lot around 12 o'clock, and that's the second day in a row that we've seen this bounce in the beginning of the day, and then we fall apart a little bit. Not fall apart, but price comes in a little bit, but it's low volume. It's a low volume pullback. And again, that's the same thing when the markets are under pressure, when there's a lot of heavy selling pressure. Sometimes you see a little bit of a bounce between 12 and 1 o'clock. So you could use that to your advantage. And then, once we kind of came out of that, we ramped up. And obviously, quarter end, it's always difficult to kind of know what is going on with quarter end, right? We heard earlier in the week that there might be more, they might be buying more bonds and so forth. A lot of that move is gained ahead of time, and then they're doing the actual trading of it in the last hour. So that's that. I think there was like $6 billion to buy what's known as market on close, MOC, right? Because all these guys are benchmarked to the close. That's why the closing print is so important, right? So they put down orders that are called market on close. You have to put those down 20 minutes before the close for S&P and 10 minutes before NASDAQ in order to ensure that you get that closing print. But everybody trades ahead of it once they know, what the story is if there's a big trade to do. All right, so that's a little bit about what happened today. So I will send out a P&L video for the month. Another positive month in terms of P&L for me. Only had one negative month for the year, so I will send that out in a couple days. Maybe around the 4th of July weekend, I'll send out a P&L video. But again, pretty pleased with how I finished for the month. Not perfect. I made some mistakes probably in the last week more than I did in the first 3 weeks, but I'll review all of that. Performance, went over, this is all pretty good. Also, another note, remember we talked about in the weekend video, in the member video, we talked about how the VIX was down last week, and so was the S&P. Maybe that was a little bit of a signal, and you can see the VIX is now down back below. I think we finished below 30 here. Nope, right around 30.43, but certainly moving in the right direction. A nice move back. So again, another what's the right word that I'm looking for? Major. I'm not bounce is not the right word, but sometimes we do see these bouts of volatility, and then they kind of wash out over the next couple of days, and I think that's what we have here for now. So I think that's notable for the day. And then if we also just look at in terms of performers, some of the value names did pretty well again. The banks actually did, very well. So perhaps like that was part of that trade. Perhaps that was part of the kind of month-end trade. Sometimes they do kind of change things around, but this was one of your best performers for the day, which was the banks, believe it or not. Again, this is why I always review performance at the end of the day, because sometimes there's some surprises in there. What I noticed and what I have highlighted here was the medical device companies. They really came alive today. Tandem was, I think, your best performer of the group, up 12% for the day. A lot of these have been just consolidating for a while, but while Tandem was the best performer of the group, I was talking about this TMO, which also broke out to a 52-week highs, and I have alerts on all these names because I've been watching them. The medical device companies have been so strong over the last 4 years that it pays to have alerts set on these things, and when they consolidate, you just have to be patient. Abbott's another one. If you like Abbott, this also kind of just broke the this particular downward trend line as well. So I think that's interesting, but I like that TMO a lot too. So a couple names of interest. Also a couple really nice charts. Akamai, which we saw a call buyer towards the end of last week, really strong. There were some things that didn't perform today. The Chinese internet names. I don't know if that's because there's a Chinese, some China headlines going on right now. But as a group, they've been underperforming a little bit. Remember, they've been having some really good performance, but some stocks, I think the smaller cap stocks, continued to do well. Billy saw a call buyer again in this thing. This thing was up 1.8% today, but was all the way up to about almost $48. But the smaller cap Chinese internet names seem to be performing better. Biotech also came alive. Semiconductors. Interesting. I thought they would have a little bit more momentum to them. I was watching names like Qualcomm today. These are names that we went over pre-market. Kind of got going right off, in the first 15 or 20 minutes, but really didn't have any major momentum like after the first 15-30 minutes. But I like this chart in Qualcomm. We talked about that one pre-market. I'm also in some Texas Instrument. I kind of had to chase a little bit, but I'm okay with this. I think that this has a chance, now that it's below this, to kind of move a little bit higher. So those are a couple names that I'm watching for tomorrow. Also, the trade that we're going to do a member webinar that starts in about a half an hour. Lulu was my trade of the day. We set this up really nice yesterday, basically a move out of value here. And then I took targets again. How I basically use the market webs is to try to take emotion out of the equation. Plan out your trades. We talked about two areas of targets to basically hit. The first one was this 5 minute virgin point of control, which was yesterday, which should come up on my screen right around 301. Sorry, 304, which I did take that profit target in the after hours yesterday. And then the second one, which was my ultimate target, was for this thing to get back to 314. So that's perfect. And I'm out of the trade. And that's all I was looking for. And didn't expect it to get it in one day. But again, that's really how we map out our trades and try to do it unemotional. Plan your trade out, know where your stop is, as well as know where you want to be taking the trade off before you get into the trade. All right, guys, thanks for watching. And if you're not a member, you can sign up. You go right to my Twitter feed, and you could, we'll probably give at least a 1 hour webinar on what the market webs are. And you can just click on this link, and that's where you can sign up. Again, it's only $129 a month. I think it's worth your time. You get obviously the whole trading room, for the month, but you also get the webinar too. Which, if you don't know anything about value areas and the market webs, we'll be talking about that. And we have new value areas to go over through. We have new value areas as well to go over for the month of July. So exciting stuff. Hope to see you there. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.